now to talk more about this, Deputy Majority Whip and Republican Congressman Tom Cole of Oklahoma. Congressman Cole, it's good to see you tonight. Thank you for being here. I want to show you some of the remarks that your colleagues, Republican colleagues in the Congress, have had to say about this topic we've been discussing, the separation of children from their families at the border. First, Paul Ryan, the House Speaker, and then Senator Lindsey Graham. Take a look and we'll talk about it.
Are you comfortable with the current zero-tolerance policy leading to parents and children being separated at the border?
No, I'm not. This is because of a court ruling.
Mr. Speaker, on that point, this is actually a policy change from the Trump administration for zero tolerance.
Yeah, there's also a court ruling involved, so this is something that we think should be addressed.
Religious leaders have come out and said that this is inhumane. Do you agree?
We don't want kids to be separated from their parents.
President Trump could stop this policy with a phone call. If you don't like families being separated, you can tell DHS stop doing it.
Congressman, should the president make that phone call and stop this policy?
Well, I certainly think we shouldn't be separating young children from their parents. But frankly, in this case, if you want asylum, you can go to any embassy in any country and seek it, and we'll adjudicate it there. You can come to a port of entry, and it'll be dealt with there. And again, you wouldn't be separated from your children. If you cross the border illegally, you run that risk. Frankly, we have surges like this. We had them during the Obama years. I actually had hundreds of young children held in my district at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, ranging from ages 8 to 14. They were well treated. They were eventually placed.
They specifically grappled with this question about whether to separate children from their families, and they decided not to do it, and that's how we ended up with many of these family detention centers.
Actually, Casey, that's not exactly true. When I'm looking at an 8-year-old kid, which I saw in my own district, that person wasn't with their parents. Now, they may have been separated because they traveled alone, or they traveled in a group, or they were with somebody else. So a lot of these cases are not actually involving the separation of the parents. It's a dangerous thing and discouraging people from traveling thousands of miles where they can be exploited and preyed upon and where they run great physical risk is the right thing to be doing. Now, we're going to have hopefully an opportunity this week to address this legislatively and fix it. I agree with Speaker Ryan. This is not a policy we want to pursue, but I have a lot of sympathy with border agents that are confronted with thousands of people and don't have any easy recourse as to what to do with them. Again, we've housed children for a lot of years. I've seen it myself under multiple administrations when we get these summer surges.
Well, at the same time, I take your point, but I do think it is very distinct and different to have unaccompanied minors crossing the border by themselves than to have people arriving at these detention centers. You mentioned legislation, though. Comprehensive, or if not comprehensive, then certainly more sweeping immigration legislation has failed time and time and time again in the Congress, trying to grapple with so many of these issues all at once. If, in fact, this compromise legislation that you all have talked about fails to pass the House, would you support a narrow immigration proposal to end this separation of families at the border?
I would. I'm not for separating young children from their families. But again, you have to understand the sheer scope of what we're grappling with. And frankly, I would hope people that are concerned about this would make sure our borders are more secure and that we follow the president's 4 pillars, which I still think are the most sensible way to deal with some of the problems that we have. In terms of comprehensive legislation, that's probably not going to happen. I frankly much prefer dealing with things in several pieces of legislation. I think we'll have that opportunity this week. I hope our friends on the other side of the aisle help us, and I hope Republicans, again, are supportive of what the president's trying to do in terms of securing the border.
The president hasn't been 100% clear on this compromise bill. It's been quite muddy over the course of the past few days. Is your understanding that he would sign this compromise legislation if it were to pass?
That's my understanding, and I get your point. I was confused myself on Friday, but I think the president gave an impromptu press conference and may not have understood the question. Frankly, he's been a pretty busy guy between North Korea and the G7 summit, so he may not have been fully briefed. But he's going to come and visit with us on Tuesday, and I think we'll have an opportunity to see where he's at. It's my understanding that he would support either of the 2 pieces of legislation that Speaker Ryan's planning to present to the House. But again, the idea that we can solve it in the House in a day, not true. Anything we do has to go through the Senate, has to be solved by or signed by the president. So if you want to deal with something, it needs to be bipartisan, and you need to have both chambers and the executive branch on the same page.
Given that, the time it takes to do this, do you think the president should make this phone call and stop family separations until you can take legislative
Look,
action?
I am not for family separations under any circumstances, but I'm also not for catch and release. That is, I wouldn't just release the population either. Frankly, we're on the verge of being overwhelmed in the border. We've had this before. We were overwhelmed when President Obama was there. And as I said, we had lots of centers with young children, 8 years and younger in some cases, on their own. It's not a good situation. I would hope parents don't put their children in that situation, but certainly if the parent is there, the child is better off with the parent.
Congressman Cole, thank you very much for coming on to play ball with us tonight. I really appreciate it. And I'll
Thank
see you
you
on the Hill later on this week. Thanks. Maria Teresa Kumar, your reaction to what the Congressman